people we love and trust. There's a feeling of stability and safety.
And while some people get to experience this kind of home, many do not. Others might even be forced to leave their home and go live in a home. We call this going into exile.
Yeah, in exile, everything is disoriented. You're in the unknown.
And the story of the Bible is Israelites found themselves conquered by Babylon, living in exile, far from their homeland.
And so they have asked themselves, how did we end up here? And is there any hope of going home?
And the whole story of the Bible is designed to address those very questions.
The whole story? Really?
Yeah, go back to the first pages of the Bible. Where does humanity live?
Oh yeah, they live in this really sweet garden, their home.
And they're there on one condition, that they trust and follow God's one command, and they don't. And so the consequence is banishment from the garden.
Ah, they're sent into exile.
Exactly. And so this story has been designed to set you up for Israel's story. How they were given the gift of the promised land and were able to stay there on one condition, that they be faithful to the terms of their covenant relationship with God.
They didn't. They were sent into exile.
And if you still don't see the parallel between exile from the garden and exile from Israel, think about this. In Genesis, humanity's exile led up to the story about the building of what city?
Oh yeah, Babylon. The same place the Israelites are sent.
But that's not the end of either story. In the first Babylon, God called Abraham to leave and travel to the promised land. And that story was designed to give hope to the Israelites currently living in the later Babylon.
Now eventually, they do get to leave and travel back to their promised homeland.
And when they did, it wasn't home sweet home. Oppressive empires were still ruling over them, and the people kept acting in the same corrupt ways as their ancestors. And so the biblical prophets said that exile wasn't actually over.
How could they think they were still in exile when they're at home?
Yeah, this is really important. In the Hebrew scriptures, Israel's Babylonian exile became an image of something more universal. It's that feeling of alienation and longing for something more, no matter where you live.
Yeah, I can relate to this. I have a great home, but it's situated in a world scarred with pain and broken relationships, death, tragedy, done by others, but also done by me.
And so in the Bible, exile is the human condition. We all keep repeating this pattern of human corruption leading to a Babylon that we can't escape. And it doesn't matter where you live, we are all longing for a better home.
Now Israel's scriptures held out hope that one day God would send a king who would rescue the world from all of the Babylons he created.
And after many generations pass, we meet this Israelite named Jesus of Nazareth. He wandered about with no home, announcing the great restoration, that reality of home that Israel and all humanity has been looking for.
Yeah, Jesus really cared about people who didn't have homes. He welcomed in the stranger. He said God's love is shown when you invite in the outcast and throw parties for people who don't have a place to belong.
Jesus also claimed that Israel and all humanity had lost its way, that our self-centeredness drives us to create false homes based on status and power, and these inevitably exclude others. We live in an exile of our own making. But Jesus said the true way home is one of weakness, of service, and of forgiveness. And then Jesus went into exile alongside us to show us the true way home.
Which is?
Well, Jesus said He is the way. His life and self-giving love proved more powerful than humanity's failure. He opened up a pathway to our real home. And as Jesus' followers committed themselves to Him, they discovered this new way of being human. They believed that the real return from exile had begun. And so they would call themselves sojourners or wanderers.
Oh right, they would say things like, the world isn't our home, and we're citizens of heaven.
And so Jesus' followers remain exiles as they wait for that day when Jesus returns to transform this world into a true home.
Great. So really just some quick kind of Bible historical context. So the assignment that was given to me today was to talk about, we've been talking about worldview, of course, for a couple of weeks now. So the assignment now is to talk about the worldview of the biblical time period during exile, we talked a little bit about, although that's kind of a broad brush, but specifically the Babylonian exile. And then when they returned home post-exile. So let's put that in the context just real quick. I don't want to drag this out. Let's go pretty quick, I hope. So let's kind of start with the United Kingdom. We have, of course, the first three kings. Saul, we have David, we have Solomon. The kingdom split, divided into two kingdoms, the north and the south. So the 10 northern tribes, who are they eventually? What world empire takes over them quickly? Syria. Good Bible students there. That's great. And so several decades later, the southern tribe is taken over, of course, by who? Babylonians, correct. And how long are they in exile? Do you remember that? 70 years, exactly. And then, oh, no, I'm still not doing good.
Yeah, no, after microphone, sorry.
No, it takes a team, buddy. So it's better?
You have to put it on your ear and then
Oh,
bring it
my
out.
goodness. Sorry. This is my first day. I forget. Okay. Now I can't fiddle with it for 5 minutes like I usually do. Let's see. There's too much pressure right now. Heidi, you should just had it not recorded and just live with it. It's all right. So now it looks completely funny. So good? Can you hear me? Okay, great. I feel funny, but but usually it fits. So as we get to that time period, I really did think. I hope you appreciated the video. I really do think it captured a lot, because what as the Israelites were taken into captivity, and when anybody is taken over, and they're immersed in this different nation and different culture, so there seemingly is only two choices. So if you're immersed into a culture, you're taken to another nation, what are the two typical choices? You either do what? You either conform to it and you're just a part of them, or you just absolutely maybe rebel or rise up against it, or maybe even in our day we could just withdraw from it and just kind of be isolationist. Well, but is that what the Bible calls us to do? Either of those two choices? Withdraw or just conform? So what's the third choice? What's the third choice?
Just to immerse into it, but still maintain your identity.
I want to hang on to the identity part. That's right. So I don't know, besides Jesus himself, I don't know who demonstrated this better than Daniel. So he was, the prototypical situation. I mean, he is literally thrown into a different nation, a wicked nation. Undoubtedly, he saw his own people captured and even destroyed, murdered. Do think about their worldview just for a second. So think about the worldview of the actual world and the worldview of how they would view God. So think about this for a moment. Let's get inside. When you read ancient texts, you really do have to work pretty hard about trying to get your mind in their thinking, because it was so long ago. But think about this. So what have they lost? And this is not hard. What have they lost now that they're in Babylon, being captured, taken over, in captivity? What have they lost that was dear to them? Easy stuff. What? Yeah, all physical things. So that means the land, their identity, and they're certainly trying to steal their identity, right? Exactly. So what else? Their freedom. And repeat things if I didn't hear you. The temple had that one, exactly.
All their rights.
All their rights, the law. I mean, you could say they didn't, but could you imagine how they felt like they lost God? I mean, they lost the promised land. They lost the temple. No more worship in the traditional sense. I mean, their worldview was absolutely, or could have been, absolutely shattered. So this is the mindset. This is the view of the world. Daniel's a young man. So this has to be the view of the world that he has at least potentially succumbed to fall into, right? And so we most of it, as you rattled off all the Bible answers, so certainly some of these accounts in Daniel we'll look at. We're not looking at it in great detail, just so we can get through a lot of material, hopefully. So we find ourselves in Daniel chapter 1, and what was right off the bat, what were Daniel and his three friends? What did the king and his court try to do to them? You remember? They changed their names, identity.
Eat the king's food.
Eat the king's food. Excellent. We're going to come back to all these in a second. We're going to take our time, but let's get it before us real quick. What else? You remember something
Live
more?
under the king's enforcement.
Absolutely. Great. So that's that freedom part of that.
They removed a lot of their cultural things that they did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we can infer some things too, right? I mean, you think they looked like Hebrews in the king's court? No. I mean, their hair was going to be different. The clothes was going to be different. There was something really important they did for 3 years. You remember?
They basically went to university to learn.
I agree with that parallel, right? I mean, how would we feel? I mean, we all get nervous as parents. Those who are parents have moved either entering the college age or in college age or post-college age. And what's our worst fear? We use the word indoctrinated, right? I mean, so could you imagine the indoctrination that this took place? And this was far more than, like, even in air quotes, preparing them for some career or worldview change. They were trying to turn them into something different, something entirely different. So it says, to your point, they educated them for 3 years, taught them not just language and air quotes, they literally changed their language, completely indoctrination, all the education of the Chaldeans. So, I mean, how would you feel if you had no contact with your child, man, boy or girl, 17, 18 years old, and this is their state? I mean, I would be worried sick. I would think they'll never make it. They'll never make it. There's just no possible way. So this is where Daniel finds himself. So we already alluded to this just a moment ago. So, and these are some hard questions because we don't really know the exact answers, and I think that's going to be the very point. So out of all the things, again, inferences and explicitly stated, education, language, names, clothes, hair, the one thing we know as Bible students, the one thing that Daniel drew the line was what? The food.
Defiling themselves.
Didn't defile themselves with the king's food. Right, exactly. So the question is, why the food? Why was that the line? I mean, couldn't you say the other things many things were just as harmful? I mean, do we not want to tell our children, and do we not protect our own brains, even whether we're 50, 30, or 70, to not be careful what you read, be careful what you put into your brain, who you're around all these other Chaldeans besides it seems just a few of those Hebrews? I mean, they're doing all the things that we would warn against. And yet the food is where Daniel drew the line. Any thoughts on that?
It's a very visual, like everyone saw what he ate. You may not see that he prays in his room. You may not see that, the
Yeah.
change looked like, they saw that. They saw that it was a line that he held, and that his conviction was that strong.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. And what's interesting, though, about all that, that's a great answer. The reality is he could have done that with other things, right? He could have done that with other things. He could have drew a line in the sand, anything. But what Daniel did, the answer is we don't know. We don't know why he did that. We can surmise and probably come to some good conclusions like Lori just did. But at the end, that was Daniel and his friends' judgment on how to navigate the culture in Babylon at that time. And I think that's the point. Because God does not tell us, because the whole point of this, of course, is to learn about the worldview of the ancient Hebrews in Babylon and the worldview when they returned home from Babylon. That is ostensibly the topic of the class. But I think what Sterling wants us to do is to take that past that and like, okay, how does that fit us? And that is why I was really, I'm not a big video shower. That is why I made an exception today, because I think that really captured a lot. We are in our own Babylon. Are we captured? Or do we have our freedoms completely restricted? No, we don't. But is someone trying to steal our identity? Somebody trying to change your identity? That's exactly what our culture wants us to do. And as we move through Daniel, what are some other incidents that happen? We don't know where Daniel is. That's just kind of one that we don't know, but we know the three friends we had that remarkable scene when they're trying to get Daniel's three friends to bow down before this statue to worship a false god, or at least appear to like they're worshiping a false god. And of course, they make this great stand against them. And so, they try to rob the identity. What were they trying to rob the three friends of? Their devotion to God. So the culture's trying to rob them from their identity, rob them from their devotion of God. And I know the food seems to be much more like that was just a judgment call. And you think, well, they would have completely violated God's command by bowing down before them. Well, you know what? I agree with that, okay? To be clear, I agree with that. No doubt about it. That would have been a direct violation. So don't misunderstand me, please. But I will say, even in our culture, we can contend that we're tempted to do complete violation of what God wants us to do. But I tell you what, we have almost an infinite ability to justify what we can do. Is it really a violation? I mean, could Daniel and his three friends, I've already said what I think what they did was the ideal thing, and if they'd done the wrong thing, we wouldn't even known about it, right? And this was some example of what not to do. But could they have not, under their circumstance, said this? Is you know what? What I'm going to do right now means absolutely nothing in my heart. I mean, it means nothing to me. This statue means nothing to me. And in fact, rather than just die at this young stage of my life, then I would have no influence at all over the king and his court. And so really, I'm just going to bow down, play the game. And I know what's in my heart. God knows what's in my heart. And I could go on and keep serving God. And I could later be a greater influence. I mean, you see how we could do that? I mean, something so overtly wrong, but yet, I mean, we had this remarkable ability to kind of make it okay sometimes. And so they did not let, Daniel and his three friends did not let the culture steal his identity, did not let them steal their devotion from God. And think about what I just wonder if they had been successful if it was just a Bendigo. I wonder. Maybe so. But I don't think it's incidental that all three of them are there, standing firm. So we talk about how worldviews are shaped, how they're formed, how they're challenged, how they're maintained. And I tell you what, being around the right folks at the right time, it's not insignificant. And then we march forward just a little bit further. And we have this, again, we know these accounts, the reason we're not going to them. So Daniel chapter 1, Daniel chapter 3 with the statue and the bowing down. And then we have this great lion's den story. And these aren't just great, fun Bible stories to tell our kids. I mean, think about this historical account that happened all these many, many hundreds of years ago. And so all the king's officials were, they were just green with jealousy and envy of Daniel. And of course, they tried to form this plan against him. Listen, we know Daniel prays. We know what his practice is. So if we can't find anything wrong with him, so we'll manufacture something that will make him do something wrong. We know the story well. So they try to make some decree that, for 30 days you could only pray, the only God you can pray to, king, is, "Oh, you king. Oh, good king." And of course, the king buys it hook, line, and sinker, makes the decree, and finishes the story. So what does Daniel do at the very outset of the 30 days?
He defies it.
Say it again.
Goes to his window and prays to God.
And why did he do that? It's because it's what he did every day. He didn't alter anything he did. He wasn't trying to make a big show of things. He just did what he always did. He opened up his windows, faced Jerusalem, and prayed to his God. So, if we think about worldview, again, how Daniel maintained his worldview. So he found a way in his own judgment. He was working out his own salvation with fear and trembling. He found a way to keep his identity.
Amen.
He found a way, that his three friends found a way to keep his devotion to God. And I think equally important to all of that, he found a way to keep his habits where it would keep his worldview the correct worldview. Is there a command? Is there a command that Daniel was following in Babylon? Some Hebrew command? Did he have to pray 3 times a day? Did he have to do it out in the open? Did he have to open the windows? Did he have to face Jerusalem? No, he did not. But that was how Daniel made a judgment to navigate his culture and to maintain his purity toward God. And the thing I can do is just halfway through the class, not even halfway. I'm going to say it right now, I'm going to say it again later. I mean, that is the point of this class. How can you maintain your biblical-centered, Christ-centered, God-centered worldview in the culture? Because God does not call us to withdraw from the culture. And he certainly doesn't call us to compromise and give into it. Jesus says, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. And so this is a powerful thrust in our mission. We are called to go out and engage the culture, be in the culture, but not of the culture. And kind of let you know something? That's hard. That's hard to do. That's hard to do. And I can't tell you what that looks like for you, because it changes all the time. And I do think that's the point of Daniel. I mean, I do resent the idea of like people who don't know very little about the Bible and who are even critical of Christianity. They think it's a bunch of pat answers. Have you ever noticed that? Like just there's these binary choices, you steal or you don't steal. And you don't. Man, I'll tell you what, you hadn't read the same Bible I've read. Because it is this constant working out with your own judgment, prayerfully, to try to figure out, like, how do I handle this situation? And that stuff, we're going to talk more about that just in a moment. Let's think about it some more. And sometimes at Vestavia Church of Christ, we had this Bible curriculum, and we called Daniel a homesick hero because he was away from home, the way we always remembered it. So Daniel was a homesick hero. Who else was a homesick hero?
Ezekiel.
Ezekiel was a great one. That's what we're going to talk about in a moment. Anybody else come to mind? Oh, I'm sorry?
Joseph.
So Joseph was a homesick hero in a different era, right? That's right. He was away from Jerusalem and Egypt. Another form of Babylon was Egypt. Anybody else? Esther was a very unusual homesick hero, right? Yeah, because that was kind of like after the return, but yet she was still home away. Yeah, very good. So I want to go back to Ezekiel just for a moment because he was such an unusual. I won't spend a lot of time on him, but he was a fascinating character, not quite as practical as Daniel is in my mind. But there are some takeaways, though. What were two super unusual things that happened to Ezekiel that God calls him to do in his culture? Hope we're not called to do this. You remember? Two things. Ezekiel chapter 4, I believe.
Animal.
Yes. And you remember, that was a compromise, actually. It was first going to be human excrement. It was like, yeah, wasn't near as bad. It was just cow poop. So it wasn't near as bad. Yeah, so he had to cook over cow dung. That's right. And to kind of show how Judah's defilement for all those years. And what else? I didn't hear. Weird. Remember? Yeah. For a long time. I mean, you talk about holding a plank. That's tough. I was like, over a year. I mean, he's strapped, tied rope. I mean, wow. Now that had to look funny in his culture. So my takeaway, and I'm going to share something. I'm going to do two things I normally don't do. Don't show everybody as normally. I'm going to share something personal in a moment. And but sometime God, when we're trying to keep our identity and keep our devotion and keep our good habits, sometimes that's going to look really weird. Is God going to call me to probably lay on my side and cook over that? No, I don't suspect so. But he will call us to make some things look very different sometimes. Very, very different. And it won't make sense to people. And sometimes it won't even make sense to other Christians. And it's okay. It's okay. They're probably trying to think about what's best for you. And so I'm going to violate a rule. I'm going to share something personal, like I mentioned. And the only reason I'm doing this, one, because it's super applicable to this, and also it makes me look bad, not good. So that's my rule. So there's just probably a handful of you who know really why our family's here in Bowling Green. Maybe just a couple talking points about it. Matt would be an exception. He would know deeply why we're here. The elders do. And I'm going to just share just a high-level view of that, just to make a point. And the reason why this is the opposite of self-aggrandizement, because as you'll see in the story, I was the holdout. So here we really had a really good life by all accounts, the way it looked in Birmingham. And so we have special guests here, Jason and Jennifer. They work with us in Birmingham, so they're here. So we have a business in Birmingham together. We had a nice home in Birmingham. I'm approaching 50. I was 48 when I moved here. 48 years lived in Birmingham. Tori's a little older than me. She's 50 years in Birmingham. All our family's in Birmingham. I mean, if you left Birmingham for our family, I mean, you were going to be in trouble. And so we're like, that was the rule somehow, not in writing. And so just keep that in mind. So we come up to Bowling Green 2 years ago, 2 years, a couple months ago for the weekend retreat. So Lainey's my daughter, Lainey, so she's going to be a rising senior, so summer for her senior year. And we come up here, and we remember we talked about last week about worldview shaped and about how sometimes it's like these small habits that are formed, and sometimes it's big events kind of trigger something. Well, this was a big event. So when we got done with this weekend, we came up for the culminating part that Sunday morning. Lainey had been here all weekend, so we come up for the weekend, and we think everything's great. We're about to finish life was great in Birmingham. It's like, this is just, so we thought. And so on the way home from that event, from the team weekend, Lainey shares with us that she's just having some struggles morally back home. And like a lot of things, you start kind of unwinding that ball of yarn. Those struggles were deeper than we thought. Just a lot of peer pressure that she was facing and had given into. And so we're like, hopefully any decent, even halfway decent parent, we're like, hey, listen, we'll work through it. Now, just you're doing the right thing by talking about it. We'll work through it. Don't know how that's going to look yet, but we're going to help you through this. So I thought it'd just be kind of normal, just kind of like, okay, start putting some guardrails and a little more guardrails in place. Be careful who she's hanging around. Well, with Lainey, it's not that simple. And those who know Lainey are really laughing hard. And so it was complicated. She was, I'm saying these things to make it succinct. She was super popular at school. We went to a large school, and it wasn't like she was like around a new set of friends. These were friends for a long time, and they just were getting in trouble together. And we were very engaged parents, by the way. We didn't know about it. Some of it was happening right in our house. So I was like, I don't really know what we're going to do. I mean, I didn't know, honestly. I was like, well, we got to figure it out somehow. So Lainey has this idea. She said, Dad, I've been praying about this nonstop for a few days. And I really think the only way I can be successful, I think, and live how God wants me to live, if I'm not in Birmingham at all. I just don't think I can say no all my senior year to all the things. I don't know how I'm going to escape it. I mean, I just can't run away. I know I need to learn how to say no, but I just can't be around the same people. I'm like, well, babe, I was like, we can't move. I mean, our life is here. And she was like, I understand, okay. Well, she didn't give up. And the story gets long from here. But a lot happened in several days. And Tori starts, she's my prayer warrior. I would not say that she was in here, by the way. She's helping teach. And so she came to me and she's like, I think we need to make a change too. I don't, again, it's a long story. She's like, I don't see how Laney's going to be successful. We always said we would do anything for our kids spiritually. I was like, yeah, but not move. Does anything really anything? And so, and embarrassingly, this is what I was thinking about. I mean, that's why I don't mind telling the story. I was thinking about, what are we going to do about work? Where are we going to live? All those things have to be handled, by the way. I mean, it's not magic. But I was just thinking about all these different things. And so we went to go see Keith Stoneheart, who did that meeting two years ago. And it was so fascinating for me. And I'm sorry to take this personal story, but man, it's just so instructive how to navigate culture and how things just they look absurd to somebody else. And so we met with Keith Stoneheart, and it was so fascinating. It was great for me to listen to Laney's whole story uninterrupted, talking to somebody else, and I'm just kind of like listening. I'm like, oh, brother. There we go. And so, and then, of course, Tori, my faithful rock, she was just like, we just need to move and be done with this. Oh, no. And so I listened to Keith, and Keith looked at me, and he's like, brother, he's like, if my 17-year-old wanted to leave all her friends that she's known and still loves, and come and start anew just to be right with God, he said, I hate to tell you, brother, I'd jump at the chance. I'm like, all right. So I was the holdout, and I got to think about Abraham a lot. You remember that story in Genesis 13? I was thinking, I'm Lot. I'm thinking about the pastures and how we're going to make money and where we're going to live. All these things have to be navigated, by the way. And I have my 17-year-old and my lovely wife, who's Abraham. They're thinking about the only that matters, spiritual things. Only that matters. Don't we say that over and over again to our kids? Only that matters is you live for God. And so now the test was make Dave. So let me just share with you. As a parent, as that looks to this group in Bowling Green, let me tell you something. Everybody in Birmingham was like, no way. You got to learn how to say no. You know, you can't be. You can't do this. And that's not being critical of the people. That was just their perspective because it looked different to them, right? And there was some motivation there, you know. So we did something that looked absolutely absurd. We were kidding about this yesterday. It kind of reminded us of some stuff. It was when we told the story, it reminded me. I mean, we were living in a hotel. Matt would let us Laney in school. And so we were living in a hotel, clothes piled in, had no place to live. And we're like, and I tell you what, now I know everything's not a fairy tale. I know sometimes you do things, and guess what? You make the wrong judgment, and then you course correct. But for us, that was the best decision we ever made for our family. And the honeymoon's over. It's 2 years later. And we just have, I'm not going to say too much more, but let's just say things have worked out super well. Let's say it worked well. I mean, I've got a young lady now that's just absolutely living for Jesus. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I won't say any more about it. But but anybody who's around would understand that. And so, but there's just some providential things. Out of the 100,000 homes or so there are in Bowling Green, the greater Bowling Green area, we had no idea, by the way. We moved right behind Lexi. And here, what 24-year-old who is ultra busy with work and her own life, what 24-year-old goes to a 17-year-old and totally invests in her and takes her to Bible studies and takes her to her social work stuff? Who does that? Well, I'll tell you who does that. People who love Jesus. And all those things. Now listen, you could have changed your GPS and you could have failed. It wasn't just the move. It was the move was the catalyst for all these other decisions that had to be in place. Bible studies, coming to church, making new friends. I mean, your classmates welcome you with open arms so they didn't even know you. I mean, all these things just happened. And it was a consequence of just some great obedience by by my wife and daughter, and they kind of just drug me along. And I'm just so thankful. I'm so thankful for that. I really am. Sterling?
The one thing that in your story that I think also applies to the people in Daniel's time is just everybody's always asking, how is God going to fix this? How can God fix? And I think for us, even for Daniel and for the people, the poor people who were living in Jerusalem, who were looking around at shambles, for you all living in Birmingham, how can God fix it? And then when Jesus is walking around in the first century, you know, we're all doing what we're trying to do, but I don't see how God can fix this. I think that's a popular worldview question that even us today are walking around asking, we're doing what we can do, but how can God fix this?
Yeah. And the answer might be, you just take a step. You take a step in obedience, in what you deem to be obedient, and that's where it begins. And I'm glad you kind of broke that story up and mentioned that. It's very, very thoughtful. Is that the last bell? Is that right? Okay. Well, good way to end it. So, I apologize. I hope that personal story didn't take too long. I just hope it was an illustration of just an example of how to try to navigate culture. Because remember, that's what God's calling us to do. Is to live in the world and make a difference. Remember, I won't say last thing about Jeremiah speaking to the Babylonian captivity. He said, seek peace in the city. I mean, it's a mission. It's a mission to go into the culture and change it and not let it change you. And so anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate you so much.